Okay, yes, I really am here. I beg your pardon and excuse myself. During the first hour of today's program, some things came up, and I had to take care of them. And the good news is, taken care of. Everything is fine. I'm fine. You're fine. We're all fine, and I am ready to do the second and third hours of today's program live as usual. So I'm back, and I'm beautiful. This is the Charles Freedman radio program, a slightly truncated version on this lovely Thursday. You may reach the program at the usual telephone number, 831-265-5050. Your call is always welcome, regardless of the topic. So, hey, heat 'em up. News talk from 9 to noon, I guess from 10 to noon today. I assumed that during the first hour they probably ran an hour of a preceding program, so that was news talk too, but this is new news talk as opposed to old news talk. Okay, now that we've gotten all that out of the way, welcome to today's program. This is one of those times, I occupy I guess you'd call it a hallowed time spot in talk radio. Weekday mornings from 9 to noon. Now, here on the West Coast, this is exactly the same time slot that used to belong to the late, great Rush Limbaugh. Essentially the father of news talk radio. Limbaugh was a giant. He was an incredible talent, and in addition to being a great broadcaster, he was also an intellectual. Now, Mr. Limbaugh would probably have been upset and wincing to hear himself called an intellectual, but I was always impressed listening to his program over the years. Here was a guy who didn't go to college, but had educated himself in economics, in history, in political philosophy, to the extent that he could debate with very sophisticated people and hold his own. And one of the things that I always admired about Limbaugh was that he knew what he thought, and he knew why he thought it. He had a philosophical foundation of limited government conservatism. And, he hadn't made this up. He never claimed to, I'm a great original thinker. I never heard him say that. No, he was constantly standing on the shoulders of giants. He talked about William F. Buckley, Jr., whom he had the opportunity to meet, befriend, and speak with at length. He talked about Friedrich Hayek. He talked about John Locke. He talked about great conservatives of history, great enunciators of the modern liberal tradition, which, of course, is what conservatism is all about. Conservatism is all about liberalism, classical liberalism. And Limbaugh understood that and embodied it. Now, why do I bother opening today's program with a paean to Rush Limbaugh? Well, this is one of those times, and they happen occasionally, when I can't help but thinking, gosh, I wish Rush were around. I'd love to know what he'd have to say about this. A couple of days ago, I went on quite a rant. Oh, hey, we've got a phone call. Okay, well, let's do that. Carl's on the line. He wants to talk about the war in Gaza. Are you for it or against it?
Yeah, I'm for it. Morning, Charles.
Good morning, sir.
Well, I would have loved to hear more about your opinion on Rush Limbaugh, but sorry to interrupt you. But I didn't even know you hadn't run the first hour. I just finally got a chance to tune you in, and then I find out that you weren't there anyway.
No, I had something come up, and I called in and said, hey, I need the time, but I'm here now and happy to have you with me.
Yes, happy to be here. One of the memories of Rush Limbaugh when he had his television show was it was great because he would show a clip of what somebody said to a certain group of people, and then he would show another clip 2 weeks later of this guy completely saying the opposite to a different group of people and pointing that out on TV. It was very embarrassing to some people. I mean, he would run those a couple of times and say, what is this guy really supporting?
That's
he's turned 180 degrees, and I think for that reason they did what they could to get him off the air.
That's an old political trick, and it's one of the casualties of the modern era. It used to be in the days of, for example, Abraham Lincoln. If a politician went to one county and said something and then went to the next county and said something, odds were pretty good that he could get away with it because Americans were rather isolated in those days. But nowadays, you've got television and the internet. My God, if you try that, if you actually do make different presentations at different times, it's a cinch you're going to get nailed for it.
Yeah, and he was good at that. I happened to be in Mississippi during the time his show was on, brief period, but I was a geographical bachelor at the time, and so I really looked forward to watching his show in the evening. And then suddenly people couldn't find a show anymore because they moved him around to all kinds of weird hours.
Yeah, I remember that. If you wanted to watch his television program, it was often on at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm talking about, not mid-afternoon.
He was totally frustrated by that because he had no control over it.
Right. It was a syndicated program, and they'd sell it, and we'll slot it, in the middle of Night Owl Theater.
Yeah, but he was a master at having his people point out blatant inconsistencies and show them on national TV, and I think they just could not put up with that.
Well, later on in the program, after we conclude our conversation, there's something, I talked about Limbaugh today because there's something that I wanted to raise, and as soon as I get the chance, I will. But right now, the floor is yours. So, what are we talking about, Carl?
Well, you had said if Hamas wanted the war to end, all they had to do was give up their hostages.
I believe that.
Okay, so what would that look like?
That would look like Hamas giving up their hostages. They return all of them, both the living and the dead. And at that point, the ongoing effort by the Israeli Defense Forces in Gaza to hunt down and destroy Hamas would come to an end. And the reason
you really believe that? Would that be the smart thing to do?
No, it wouldn't be the smart thing to do. In my view, it would be politically necessary because political opinion in Israel, and remember, Israel's a democracy. You cannot ignore public opinion in Israel. It's not possible. The Israeli people are war weary. Furthermore, the Israeli military is actually quite small. It's a small country. They have a lot of reservists they call up for special operations. Usually those don't take very long. The demands that have been placed on the Israeli military over the past couple of years are extraordinary. And the IDF is pretty much exhausted. So they could use a breather. But the main thing is that Israeli civilians, Israeli people, want the war to end. The reason the war continues is because the hostages continue to be held. Yesterday, I don't know if you had a chance to hear yesterday's program, but there's this picture on the front page of the Wall Street Journal of this rather striking woman in front of a tableau of flames and smoke, and she's demonstrating. She's an Israeli citizen, and she is demonstrating for an end to the fight and a return of the hostages. That's what she wants. And I was making the point that, well, right now, Hamas won't return the hostages, and that's why the fighting continues. So she's really asking for inconsistent things, and she's certainly asking the wrong people. If you want the hostages released, you don't go to Israel, because Israel doesn't hold the hostages. If you want hostages released, you go to the people who are holding the hostages. That's only reasonable. But in modern politics, people don't often think rationally. It's, I want it, I want it, I want it, and they don't stop to think, well, okay, who has it? How are you going to get it? And a little bit of methodology. If Hamas were to release the prisoners, the hostages, I have no doubt that the war would end almost instantly.
Well, I think you said the IDF needs a breather. Well, for sure, Hamas needs a breather.
Oh, don't get me wrong. Part of my answer was that, do I think that's a good idea? No, if it were me, I would say, hey, thanks for the hostages, now you die.
Yeah,
but
because otherwise, that's just going to continue.
I understand that, but that is not the way public opinion operates. You and I know better. They do not.
Well,
you and I view Hamas through clear eyes. We understand what utterly evil monsters they are.
Well, look what they've done with whatever assets they have. They haven't done anything to improve the, let's say, non-militant Palestinians' life.
Carl,
they've done nothing. Those people are still back in the prehistoric times, just about.
Carl, you don't have to convince me. I understand that. I agree with you. I see what you see. But you cannot get soft-hearted, soft-headed people raised on kumbaya to understand that there really are people in this world who are so god-awful that the only way you deal with them is to kill them. Wow. That sounds hardcore. That sounds hardcore, but that's what you're saying, and that's what I'm saying, I think.
Yeah, but the crowd that you have mentioned, the kumbaya and et cetera, they excuse Hamas's actions by what they're being forced to do by Israel. They're being so oppressed by Israel that this is all they have. This is all they can do. Lob missiles at indiscriminate targets.
Right.
Put the Palestinians in great danger by launching missiles out of population centers and using that as propaganda. That's all they have.
You're forgetting my own. You're forgetting my own particular favorite. These are people who dress small children in explosive vests and send them into bus stops and pizza parlors.
Yes, and the excuse for that is the Israelis have forced them to do that.
Yeah, right. I understand. They're vile. They're horrid. Nevertheless, the political reality is that if Hamas were to release the hostages, I am convinced that in spite of the fact I don't think it would be a good idea, nevertheless, reality is that would mean an end to the war.
Wow. Well, that's just history repeating itself.
I understand that. But if that's the case, and
area.
When I was talking about this, one of the things I said was, for this reason, and this is going to sound rather bizarre, I hope Hamas retains their hostages because I want the IDF to continue hunting them down. And that's what it takes. If Hamas has the means to save themselves, but they are so utterly evil that they don't even see it. All they see is we have to we have to keep these hostages and keep most of them are dead. Most of the ones they still have are dead, but the ones who aren't dead, we reduce them to human skeletons and brutalize them and torture them, and this is how they roll. I mean, they're unspeakable.
You don't think Hamas is hanging on to the hostages as a means of protection?
Maybe they think that. Maybe they think
Well,
that. Maybe they. But the thing is, that's kind of like a guy who grabs hold of a 10,000-volt line, and his muscles lock up, and he can't let go, because obviously, right now, the way things are, what we're looking at, Hamas is holding the hostages, and because Hamas is holding the hostages, the IDF is continuing to hunt them down. So obviously, they're not buying safety or protection; they're buying extermination.
Do they know? Do they look at it that way, though? What other reason would you think that they would have to hang on to the hostages?
I don't understand their thinking.
I think that they're afraid that if they give them back, they have nothing to protect themselves or nothing to threaten the IDF with. Whereas, now we're just exposed. We don't have anything to hide behind.
Well, they hide behind the Palestinian people all the time. Just the other day, they had some kind of an installation in a church, I believe it was.
Yeah.
And the Israelis attacked it, and it was a big thing. And then the Israelis.
Of course, the media picked that up.
Yeah, they had to apologize for doing this, but this is why they do it, because Hamas puts their installations in churches, and
I'm surprised it didn't have a baby milk factory sign there.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, but
you remember that in Iraq?
Yeah, but
again, baby milk factory sign that was just bombed up.
Again, these people are so vile that I really don't understand their thought processes, and I'm kind of glad about that. I really don't want to. You suggest they think that they're buying security by holding the hostages. But right now, they're holding the hostages, and they continue to be hunted down. So, obviously, it's not working. So, maybe try something else.
Let's say they gave up the hostages.
No.
Do you think that Israel would just pull out of Gaza and leave it vacant?
No, they can't pull out unilaterally. But what they would do is suspend their active military campaign, and turn to the question of constructing some post-war administration there. Interestingly enough, I had an emailer who sent me a piece. This is from the Allgemeiner, and let me see, what's the author's name? Arguello. Support for Hamas plummets among Gazans. Doubts over its governance grow. And this is evidently some survey that's been conducted among Gazan Palestinians. And Hamas is, has something like 5% of Gazans speak that, if a post ceasefire election is held, they would vote for Hamas. The largest vote would go to Fatah, or the PLO, slightly ahead of independents, and another big chunk simply would not vote. But the way Hamas has maintained its control of Gaza for a long time is not through that much high a level of public approval. It's through terror. They simply, you do what we say and toe the line, or we'll shoot you, we'll kill you.
Well, those kind of polls are suspect.
I agree with that, but the point being that Israel is not going to permit Gaza to simply reconstitute itself in Hamas, rather, to reconstitute itself in Gaza. They've already taken steps to make sure that the status quo ante is not going to come back.
Well, what will happen then is they will be picked off one by one and replaced, much as what the U.S. enjoyed in Iraq and Afghanistan. There'll be little skirmishes, but they will be subject to, snipers, IDFs, or IEDs, that kind of thing. And Hamas will at least the hostilities will be limited in a large part to Gaza instead of Israel. But the hostilities will continue against the Israelis, but now they'll be in Gaza.
Well,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting to see what happens here, but again, I really believe that if Hamas wants a prompt ceasefire, the way they could get it is to release the hostages, because at that point the political will to continue the military campaign against them simply would no longer be there. It's the retention of the hostages that keeps the Israeli Defense Forces going.
Wow. I tend to believe that Hamas thinks the hostages are hostages that they can kind of hide behind. It isn't working out that well for them, but
that's my point. That's my point. So Hamas, I am accusing Hamas of being irrational.
Well, yeah, they're getting an argument there.
Okay. Okay. So no, this is their reasoning. Their reasoning is flawed, faulty, foolish, idiotic, nonsensical, and irrational. And as a result of that flawed thinking, they're continuing to get their heads crushed. And frankly, I'm happy to see it happen. Every time a Hamas terrorist is killed, that's a blow for liberty.
Well, it's really a sad situation, but Israel just wants to be left alone, and they've done very well with that miserable piece of land that they were given. They've done very well, and the surrounding, the West Bank and Gaza, even Israel, even India, they look at what Israel has done with what they had and look at what they have themselves, and there might be some jealousy there, but even the settlements that Israel abandoned, the Palestinians have made nothing of that. I know they blew up their houses and knocked things down, but they still live, in the first century.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
the refugee camps.
This is how
never.
This is the Hamas model. They all they're interested in is making war against Israel and killing Jews. And
before Hamas, you had the PLO.
Yeah, their charter is basically the same thing. No recognition of Israel.
Wasn't any better.
The people, people keep going around. Let's have a two-state solution. Let's have a two-state solution.
Yeah.
The only way you can do that is each state recognizes the other's right to exist. The Israelis have been willing to do that for decades. They say, we have no problem. We're perfectly willing to recognize a Palestinian state. The Palestinians say, no, under no circumstances.
More than once, peace had been dangled right at the nose of Arafat, and he rejected it.
No, most notably in 2000, at the end of the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton went to the moon and back to try to get that settled. And at the end of the day, Arafat walked away, and Bill Clinton was there with egg on his face and hopping mad. Clinton's a guy, he's known to have a temper anyway. He was furious, and justifiably so. But that's what you get for trying to deal with with Yasser Arafat.
They gave them practically everything they demanded. And it looked like it was going to go.
No, we want the right of return. Well, you can't have it. You blew that in 1947.
Yeah, but a lot of public opinion. Maybe I'm overestimating it, but what we hear of how they malign Israel for protecting themselves, call them warmongers. They're killing babies. They're doing this. They're doing that. Good grief. I remember that speech, Netanyahu, when he was addressing the League of Nations, or What's the other?
The United
What's the other
the
one?
United Nations.
United-
You're only off by 2 generations.
Okay, United Nations. When he was addressing them, presenting Israel's position, saying, all we want is peace. We're just trying to protect ourselves.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, the problem, of course,
yeah,
the groups like Hamas are dedicated to aggressive war against Israel. They started this whole Donnybrook on October 7th by their terror attack, murdering 1,200 people and taking, 240, 250 hostages. That was a crazy thing to do.
There again, we got
the only reason they did it was
on the campus saying that Israel forced them to do that.
I understand it. The only reason they did it is because they figured that their propaganda wing could turn it into a win, and there are a lot of people out there trying to facilitate that. Frankly, I have confidence in the Israeli government. They're going to do the right thing, and I have confidence in Hamas. They will continue to do stupid things that work out to their detriment.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just wanted to hash that out, and I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I'm glad you called. And it's your initial thing was, do you really think that by releasing the hostages that would bring about a ceasefire? Yes, I do really think that, but I don't think it's going to happen. As I say, the people of Hamas are irrational and they make bad decisions, and the decision to continue to hold those hostages is going to get them killed to a large degree, and I'm all for that. Hold those hostages. Get killed. I'll celebrate.
Yeah, me too. I like that funny skit that you play every once in a while where there's the Hamas or whoever, they have somebody that's a comedian that talks about.
I understand what you're talking about. That's the interview with the Hamas guy. And
yes.
He's trying to convince all that we want is to kill the Jews. If you ever want to, that's as funny to look at as it is to listen to. Go to your computer, go to YouTube, and type in Hamas Babylon Bee and hit enter. It'll come up right away, and you can watch it as well as listen to it, and I guarantee you it'll give you a laugh, or 6 or 7.
I've got it written down, and I'll check that out.
Yeah, just go to YouTube. Go to YouTube, type in Hamas Babylon Bee. That's all you need.
Yep.
Up it comes.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you.
You remember it? What's his name? Jeff Dunham. He has one of his puppets is what is it? I can't think of his name, but he's the suicide bomber in the form of a skeleton.
Oh, God.
Have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
It is hilariously funny. One of his things is he's looking down at his feet, the puppet there, and sees the bones, and he goes, "Oh, God damn it!" And he says, "I mean, Allah damn it."
Oh, geez.
Yeah, you have to look up Jeff Dunham and Suicide Bomber. He's got several skits. It is really a crack up.
Let's see here, just for grins. Okay. You say Jeff Denham, D-E-N-H-A-M?
Dunham.
D-U-N.
D-U-N-H-A-M, yeah, Dunham. He's a puppeteer, a ventriloquist.
Oh, okay. Well, here we have United Arab Emirates, Pina Abu Dhabi, Ahmed, Jose Halap.
That's his name, Ahmed.
That's the one, Ahmed. Okay, well, let's see what we have here. Meet Ahmed, the dead terrorist.
There you go.
Oh, my God.
It was so funny. It is so funny.
Oh, God, that looks like something out of one of those bad science fiction movies.
Exactly, but if you know Jeff Dunham, he's very clever. He's got other puppets, but this is one of the funniest.
First I've heard of it. Thank you for turning me on to it. Now I've got something else I can look at for a chuckle. Great work, Carl.
Okay, well, I hope you have a good day.
You too. Thanks again for the call.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, it is 10:36. Let's grab a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back for more on the Charles Freedman radio program.
It's hot up here. Hi, folks. Warren Knox here of Knox Roofing. Yes, it really does get hot up here, but it's okay because Knox team has been sweating it out on rooftops for 30 summers to make certain your roof will keep you warm and dry through the winter. If you have any doubt about your roof will weather the winter, call Knox Roofing today and ask about a free rooftop inspection. We love it up here. 461-0634. Thanks, folks.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support.
It's high time to celebrate the opening of the new Hook Outlet Dispensary, 1129 Mission in Santa Cruz. Get in on the opening fun and really low prices on the Hook's unmatched selection of top-quality medical and recreational cannabis flower, vapes, drinks, gummies, and concentrates. The Hook Outlet is now the West Side's source for finest cannabis at the lowest prices. Get in on all the opening fun and low prices at the all-new Hook Outlet. HookOutlet.com for details and deals.
Okay, welcome back. I'm Charles Freedman. This is the Charles Freedman radio program on SantaCruzVoice.com. I had begun today by talking about the late, great Rush Limbaugh, and the context was, this is one of those times when I wish I could say, Rush, what do you think about this? Or tune in his program and find out what his take is. Now, what am I talking about? I am talking about the new policy from the Trump administration of taking pieces of ownership of private corporations. Now, I addressed this earlier in the week, and I did so in terms of no uncertainty. This is a god-awful idea, and somebody should get Mr. Trump to knock it off. Today, Philip Wegman, writing for Real Clear Politics, talks about this, or writes about it. Under Chairman Trump, U.S. takes stakes in private industry. 1 year ago, at the Economic Club in New York, Donald Trump confronted a room full of businessmen and billionaires. Gave him a choice. Line up behind him and freedom in the coming election, or for the communism that Comrade Kamala was surely developed as president. He won, she lost. And while the Biden-Harris administration never dared to nationalize industry, the second Trump administration is doing so. The great taking, where the federal government takes stakes in private companies, has commenced. Intel, the once mighty but now beleaguered Silicon Valley giant, agreed to sell the federal government 10% of its shares last week, marking the most significant state intervention in private business since the Great Recession and the largest ever orchestrated by a Republican administration outside of times of crisis. This is what I would like to hear from Rush Limbaugh on. Because Rush was always There were times when I believed that Rush Limbaugh compromised his principles in order to support Donald Trump. Now, I was never able to get a phone call through to him to ask him that question, but as I listened to him, there were times, not all the time, but occasionally there were things that Mr. Trump did, and Limbaugh would support them, and I would think that's not something that you would normally go for. Another one of the tests I use is, what if the other guy did this? What if the shoe's on the other foot? I think that's a great test. I recommend it to you for use. The idea being, okay, Donald Trump is doing this. What if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris were doing this? The exact same thing. Would you oppose it? Are you going to put yourself in the position of saying that a given policy is bad when they do it, but the very same policy is good when we do it? Remember earlier I was talking about Hamas being irrational? Well, they're also suicidal and murderous. But this idea, the same policy, if X does it, it's bad. But if Y does it, it's good. That is indefensible. That is indefensible. If you have any kind of a philosophical or policy foundation upon which you place your beliefs. If rather instead you're willing to say, well, whatever Donald Trump does, that's the right thing. But if the same thing were done by Joe Biden, I would be outraged. At that point, you're no longer a rational thinker. You're simply indulging a cult of the personality, one that you like, one that you don't. Now, if you say, well, Donald Trump makes the right decisions a lot more often than Joe Biden, hey, I'll sign on to that. But to say Donald Trump makes every correct decision and everything he does is right, I'm sorry. You can't say that of anybody. I don't care who it is. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where there's a particular political leader or something like that, and you're saying, my God, this person is always right. He never makes a mistake. I always agree with him. At that point, you better start asking some other questions like, what have I been eating or drinking lately? Has somebody been moving a pocket watch back and forth in front of my eyes? That's right. If you find yourself in a situation where you always agree with somebody, you're probably deluded or hypnotized or something else, because that doesn't happen. One of the first things we learn in this world is that people, every person, 8 billion of us in the world, but every damn one of us is unique. Our fingerprints, something as simple as these little whorls and lines on our fingers, are unique. How can something that small have over 8 billion variations? It does. That's what I'm telling you. That's why fingerprints are used by criminologists as absolute identification, because every single person has a unique fingerprint. Well, if something as simple and small as a fingerprint can be unique, what about political thought? What about philosophical thought? What about our mental calculations, observations, and conclusions? Can they be unique? Can they be anything other than unique? So again, if you are a supporter of Donald Trump, I urge you, look at this particular policy and say, no, Mr. Trump, you are making a ghastly error. This is a horrid mistake. And Mr. Trump seems elated with it. He seems like, okay, well, this is something we're going to do more of. And I worry, is there anyone anywhere, a Trump whisperer who can go to the president when he's obviously doing something that is utterly wrong, both in terms of economic policy and in terms of its practical outcomes? I mean, the government taking over private companies. What could go wrong? Oh, incidentally, if you would like to hear something to the other side of this, I mentioned that Philip Wegman? Yeah, Philip Wegman at Real Clear Politics has a piece today very critical of this. I hope I'm going to have more cases like it, the president said. You do have stupid people saying, oh, it's a shame. It's not a shame. It's called business. And a new kind of federal business. Before his Intel agreement, Trump closed 2 deals with NVIDIA and Advanced Micro Devices that allow those chip makers to sell advanced AI tech to China in exchange for 15% of the revenue generated from U.S. exports. Earlier in the summer, he blessed a deal allowing Nippon Steel to purchase U.S. steel in exchange for a golden share, granting the federal government vast authority over the corporation, its operations, and its decisions. His administration also entered a less-noticed 10-year agreement with MP Materials, a U.S. corporation developing rare earths, in exchange for the purchase of $400 million in the company. Asked if he was engaging in the kind of behavior he had warned against on the campaign trail, Trump pointed to what had recently been Republican heterodoxy, tariffs, his favorite economic tool. Lowered trade deficit, made the Treasury flush, helped to negotiate the world over. So it's not normal either. But you know what? Other countries did it to us. Now we're doing it to them. Does that argument appeal to you? Well, they did it. If you have small children, you've undoubtedly heard that argument at one point or another. And I doubt if you were impressed by it. Right alongside, right underneath, you look at Real Clear Politics today. And here's, right about in the middle of their daily posts, under Chairman Trump, U.S. takes stakes in private industry by Philip Wegman. Right under that is a balancing piece. This is the way Real Clear Politics operates. They'll give you the pro and they'll give you the con. So right under that is a piece by from Substack. It's not socialism. Stop pearl clutching over the Intel deal. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm pearl clutching. I'm grasping my rosary beads of orthodoxy and saying, oh, no, you shouldn't do this. So I figured, okay, well, let's see what this argument is all about. And what I get is a rather elongated and sophisticated, well, look, these other countries have done this. And some of the countries they cite are countries that are have relatively free economies, places like Singapore, Ireland, Taiwan, Luxembourg. And they cite examples of companies that are either state-owned or considerably state-owned in those countries. Well, to the degree that they have done that, hey, not a good idea. But maybe they have reasons. There's a reason why the post office in the United States is and has always been 100% government-owned. Does the post office do a wonderful job? If you have a package to send, do you take it to the post office or do you take it to UPS or Federal Express? You probably take it to UPS or FedEx. Most people do. Because you get better service and certainly competitive rates. Nevertheless, the United States government retains 100% ownership of the Postal Service, which is a perennial money sink. So to point at these examples, well, he did it. And get this, one of the other examples they point at is China. China has run sprawling industrial policies for decades and retained straight ownership in strategic sectors while using market tools to improve them. You can debate effectiveness. Yeah, you sure as hell can. China's economy today is in free fall, primarily because decisions in these state-owned enterprises were never made in reaction to market forces, things like supply and demand. No, instead, Communist Party bureaucrats, the Chinese state, the government. We shouldn't be producing as much of this as we are. We'll flood the market. The price will crash. We're facing oversupply. No, build more. Build more. Well, that's the order from the Chinese Communist Party. And if you don't want to obey it, you're going to wind up in a prison somewhere, so you do. And what happens? You wind up with a system of oversupply, not only in housing, but in all kinds of things. And crashing prices. And the government then comes along and says, oh, no, you can't cut prices. Governments can attempt to defeat the laws of economics, but they cannot do it forever. Now, so far, what Mr. Trump has done is a tiny, tiny shadow of the great transgressions that have been committed in places like communist China. But unfortunately, those of us who say Mr. Trump is now embarking down that same road, we are telling you the truth. President Trump may have denounced Kamala Harris as a communist and a socialist, but he is the one who is now taking control of the means of production. He is operating as a Marxist. And just because Donald Trump is the guy doing it does not mean that conservatives should fall in line and say, okay, this is the right thing to do. No, it is not the right thing to do. It is precisely the wrong thing to do. And conservatives in this country should let the president know it. But I don't think that's going to happen. There's a couple of reasons I don't think that's going to happen. First of all, this president is very politically talented and very forceful leader. There are people who will simply accept and follow whatever policy he does. When he said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they'd still like me, he wasn't kidding. It was a rather extreme statement of the type of political loyalty and devotion that significant numbers of people pay to Mr. Trump. But all he was doing was describing something that's very real. Mr. Trump has essentially led the Republican Party to success by stealing ideas from the Democrats. And this is one of them. Which party over the past 30 years has been constantly pushing tariffs? The Democrats. They were the ones who were constantly arguing for more trade barriers. Mr. Trump said, okay, fine, I'll take that. The jury is still out on Mr. Trump's tariff policies. The one thing I can tell you, the fact that he keeps changing his mind all the time, rising and falling, that in itself is a problem. Because when people who run businesses, real honest-to-God people in the private sector who run businesses and have to make decisions about how much to produce, how many raw materials to buy, things like that, when you continually change the conditions under which they have to operate, when you continually take decisions that raise and lower their costs arbitrarily, you make their lives almost impossible. You set companies, large and small, up for failure. Now, there are arguments on both sides for Mr. Trump's tariffs. I know where I stand. I know where he stands. But this other item, this idea of taking stakes in private companies, there can be no two sides of this question. The federal government is absolutely wrong to do this. Mr. Trump is absolutely wrong to do this. I can understand where it comes from. I can see an excuse. I can see a reason for this, but not an excuse. Remember, Trump's a businessman. Never been in the public sector before. He starts right out by being president. He's never been a member of Congress or a city councilman or a governor or any of those things. So he comes into office as a businessman with the perspective of a businessman. And a businessman would seek these shares. But Mr. Trump has to understand that his role has changed. Business leaders do not function as protectors and defenders of the Constitution of the United States. Their job is much simpler. Their job is to earn profits for their company. That is the function of a business executive. Take whatever business enterprise they're working with and operate it in such a way that it is profitable, that its bills are paid, that its workers get their wages on time, every time, and that customers who buy the company's products are happy with the product, whatever it is, a good or a service, and that they keep on buying it because they're happy with it. So running a corporation is a lot simpler than being president of the United States, for God's sake. The job is much easier. There's a focus. There's a front page story today in the Journal. In Trump's second presidency, an unfettered leader takes hold. We'll explore this in the second hour. There are a number of things here where policies that Mr. Trump is proposing, I think, are positive. The mere fact that Mr. Trump is proposing a policy does not dispose me toward it or against it. The policy is to be judged on its own merits, not because it is the brainchild of a particular individual. That is the kind of analysis that you will continue to receive on this program. And that is why right now I am telling you that Mr. Trump's predilection for state ownership of shares of private corporations, and therefore obviously injecting state direction. This is what was called industrial policy by planners for years. Republicans and conservatives have always avoided it like the plague. Democrats have always embraced it because it constitutes an expansion of the authority of the federal government, and Republicans like to see that authority restrained. We're the people for limited government. Donald Trump's seizure of shares of private companies is an extension of government authority that all conservatives should be absolutely up in arms over. And that is what I hope Rush Limbaugh would say, but I'll be damned if I know if he'd say it. It's 11 o'clock at Santa Cruz Voice. I'll be back in 6 minutes. Okay, during the break here, we had a caller who said that this Jeff Dunham guy is funny. Here's Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. Let's see what we got.
Good evening, Ahmed.
Good evening, infidel.
So you're a terrorist?
Yes, I am a terrorist.
What kind of terrorist?
A terrifying terrorist. Are you scared?
Not really, no.
And now?
Not really, no.
How about now?
No?
God damn it. I mean, Allah, damn it. Silence! I kill you!
So, Ahmed,
No, it's Ahmed.
that's what I said.
No, you said Ahmed. It's Ahmed. Silence! I kill you!
How do you spell it?
What?
How do you spell your name?
Oh, let's see. A. C. Phlegm. Silence! I kill you!
So, Ahmed, if you're a terrorist, I would suppose you have some sort of specialty.
Yes, I am the suicide bomber.
So you're finished.
What?
You've done your job.
No, I haven't.
But you're dead.
No, I'm not. I feel fine.
But you're all bone.
It's a flesh wound. Silence! I kill you! What the hell happened to my feet? Son of a bitch! What the hell? Oh, wait a minute! What the hell? What are you doing? What are you doing? Stop touching me! I kill you!
All right, just hold on. We'll fix this.
Okay, wait, what are you doing? Holy crap, I'm in the air. Wait. Wait, something is backwards. Holy crap, I need some ligaments.
Just sit still.
Okay, I will not move my ass.
You idiot! You don't have an ass.
Is that Walter?
Yeah.
He scares the crap out of me. Please do not put me back in the same suitcase.
Why?
He has gas. Saddam's mustard gas was nothing compared to a Walter Ford. It's not funny. He will kill us.
All right, listen, Ahmed, I have something to tell you.
What?
You really are dead.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I just got my flu shot.
You really are dead.
Wait, if I'm dead, that means I get my 72 virgins. Are you my virgins? I hope not.
Why?
There's a bunch of ugly-ass guys out there. If this is paradise, I've been screwed.
Well, did they say it would be only female virgins?
Holy crap! I took a shower on Monday. Friday, still not dry. You know what your breath smells like? If she had a costume, she'd have 2 D's on her chest. Where's your green card? You see my other steak.
Okay, so I get it. So Jeff Dunham is a marionette artist, a ventriloquist, very talented, and he's got a whole bunch of different characters. The Dead Terrorist is just one of them. But thanks to Carl for turning me on to this guy, because I hadn't known about him before. Oh, there's one of them looks exactly like Mortimer Snurd. You remember Edgar Bergen's Other Dummy? That's a carbon copy of Mortimer Snurd. And he must know it. Okay, it's time to get back to work. Oop. Keep. Pipe. There we go. Welcome once again to the Charles Freedman radio program. Hour number 3 usually commences at 11:06. Today, this is hour number 2. I whiffed on the first hour. Sorry about that, but I'm here now. And so, always happy to take your telephone calls. We had a very good one from Carl. Spent some time talking with him in the last hour. This hour, there's no reason why you shouldn't be the one. 831-265-5050. And by golly, I see there's somebody already there. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn down the theme music and go over here and take the call. And it's, well, the topic is Rush Limbaugh. Let's find out. Evan, are you for him or against him?
Oh, Rush Limbaugh? Oh, no, I'm for him for sure. Right when I started listening to you, I had my military vet friend. He was listening to you for a long time, and then he'd be listening to Rush Limbaugh. Got me into listening to him. I agreed with the majority of a lot of what he would say. Mm-hmm. But what's kind of funny, and he would kind of make some remarks, and I think it kind of screwed him up a little bit.
Like what?
Well, okay, I guess when I'm reading this, and this is coming from Grok X, that are AI tools here. Michael J. Fox Parkinson's critique. I guess Limbaugh accused the actor of exaggerating his Parkinson's disease symptoms. He's made some other quite interesting remarks, but other than that, I agreed with him. He had Barack Obama's magic Negro thing. He said, I guess he had some AIDS comments. Again, I felt like he was a great commentary, a great person, that had his words, but he may have screwed himself a little bit here and there. But your thoughts are real quick, and then I do have one more other thing to say.
Okay, we'll get to that. As you were talking, as always, I listen and think at the same time. When I spoke about Limbaugh in the last hour, I was thinking about the times, and this was a lot of the time, when he was being serious and discussing serious issues. Limbaugh was also a comedian and a satirist, and there were times when, frankly, I felt that the rhetoric he employed and some of the things he said went over the top into either the grounds of bad taste or sometimes absolute untruth, by exaggeration or something like that. But the thing is, if you're going to hold a comedian responsible, okay, well, that's not true. Well, then where goes your comedy? So I give Limbaugh, I give him some comedic license to go ahead
I hear you.
to do these things. But at the same time, the idea. I've recently been watching a television program on which Michael J. Fox is appearing. And he has his Parkinson's, and he obviously had difficulty moving. And it's a law show, and at times he will go into a courtroom, and in his persona as a lawyer, he will intentionally, exaggerate his movements and things like that, calling attention to them. So this is a tactic that that Fox himself is lampooning in this TV show. So as I was listening to you talk about that, I had forgotten about Limbaugh criticizing Michael J. Fox for overemphasizing his the effects of his Parkinson's. I recently had a friend who died of complications from Parkinson's, so to me the issue isn't funny, and the way that Fox is handling it in this TV show, I've got to admit, it is amusing. But here's a guy who's poking fun at something that's really, really a serious matter. So I don't know. Now, the other thing about Limbaugh, his comedy sometimes, as I say, went overboard. But I separate the Limbaugh, the political theorist, from Limbaugh, the comedian.
No, I get you 100%. Yeah, a gentleman was very funny in some of his remarks.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of laugh at, I'm not going to go ahead and say it on air, but the Chelsea Clinton thing he said about her was kind of funny. But just in general, yeah, guy was a great. I learned a lot listening to his show, and again, always yours too. But my second thing here, real quick, my friend Keith seems to listen to you once in a while when I put on your podcasts. He said something to the fact that I guess the tariffs are helping our debt. Can you shine some light on that? Put your thoughts on that subject, sir?
Well, you raise tariffs. These are taxes on imports. If you increase taxes on something that had previously been taxed either very lightly or not at all, suddenly you make more money. And President Trump and your friend Keith are pointing at that and saying, hey, look at this. There's all this money flowing into the Treasury from these higher taxes. And that's true. There's no question about it. And obviously, money into the Treasury, well, it could pay down the debt, but obviously the only thing we can do this year with it is attempt to make the deficit a little lower. Nevertheless, the idea that more money into the government helps address that problem, that's certainly true. There's no question.
Well, I appreciate for your comment there. I will have to get that podcast going again and have him listen to your comment. I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for the call, and hopefully you'll get some other callers. Thank you again, Charles. Have a good rest of your day.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time. We have got Richard on the line. Active phones during this hour. Always a good sign. Come on. There we go. Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Good, Charles. Hey, I'm glad you brought up that Rush, what you thought he would have thought of. I mean, it would have been interesting to hear that too, in terms of the Trump deal.
The reason I think it's an interesting question is because I honestly can't answer it. I wonder whether Rush would have. I know what his philosophy would have been. I know what his heart and his mind would have told him. But would he have had the perspicacity and the courage to oppose Donald Trump on this and say, no, Mr. Trump, this is a bad idea. Stop it.
I do not know, and that's a really, really good question. Because at the end of the day, it's not a conservative idea, and I always viewed Rush as a conservative,
right?
And so that's what makes it a little difficult. One of my buddies and I, we see eye to eye a lot in politics. One of my good buddies, we're in the military together, so he lives in a different state, but we'll talk sometimes, and a lot of times it goes into politics, and we joke about Sean Hannity. We say that's Trump's long lost stepson or something, because he always agrees with them. Doesn't matter, good, bad, ugly. He will always forever die on that hill. And I haven't, listened to him in a long time, and I haven't listened to him on what he thinks about this golden deal or whatever it's called. But I question for you though, Charles. In layman's terms, what is socialism?
Wow. Socialism, the way I see it, is an effort to adjust outcomes in an economy rather than an effort to simply preserve a level playing field for everyone to move forward as they best can. When you essentially stop telling people, okay, each of you as individuals can go forward, do what you can for yourself, keep the money you earn, spend it as you want to spend it. That's the Adam Smith, John Locke. That's basically the foundation of the American Republic. When you get this idea of the state is responsible for your upkeep. If you wind up one day without money for food, the government should give you food. Well, that's a foreign concept in in America throughout most of its lifetime. The idea then being, well, you better find something to do to get yourself some food. Very simple.
Right.
Socialism is it's a kind of a communal thing. The idea we are each of us responsible for all and everyone. I say that's too heavy a burden. Being responsible for just one person, yourself, now that's doable. But if you ask me to be responsible for everybody, I can't do it.
No, I can't. No, and I guess when you said at the beginning, how they kind of, to use my words, how they kind of skew the economy a little bit. There's a lot of state-owned enterprises in a way. I believe this story is a lot bigger than what people are making it out to be. I mean, it's in my personal opinion. I know you brought up Karl Marx, but it's on an earlier show in the week. But this is a first step towards that type of socialist kind of agenda, right? In my personal opinion, I think it's bigger than. And I'll say this: I would have never voted for him if he had came out and said this during the campaign. Hey, my goal is I want government to buy a stake in Intel. I want government to buy a stake in Tesla. I want government to buy a stake in whatever. I wouldn't have just said no. I'd have said hell no. That's not conservative. But then again, though, Charles, I revert back to my thinking of Donald Trump. And I mean, I've listened to you for a long time. I remember the very first presidency during that time. I don't remember what year or anything like that. But I've said it a few times. I've called in a few times, and I've said Donald Trump is not a conservative by definition. He's got conservative ideas, but to say the man is a conservative, no. I mean, we were talked about a conservative a couple of weeks ago in Barry Goldwater. That's a conservative.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, I really want to emphasize. You said that if Donald Trump on the campaign trail had come out and said, elect me and the government will acquire a 10% stake in Intel. Elect me and the government will have a share of U.S. Steel. Again, you said if he had said those things, I wouldn't have voted for him. You know what I'm reminded of? What if Joe Biden on the campaign trail 4 years earlier said, elect me and I will open America's borders. Elect me and I will bug out from Afghanistan and leave all of our military hardware behind. What Donald Trump has done, and I've said this before, Donald Trump is, he's a winner, and he's a man who looks around for ways to win. He has come to the conclusion that the Democrats had some really smart ideas, like not talking about what you were actually going to do, like keeping quiet about certain things. And Donald Trump used that. Now, it's possible, other side, maybe at the time back in a year ago, he wasn't even thinking about this. But frankly, it's something he's doing, and it's a big deal. So the American people ought to have the opportunity to pass judgment on it. And I think most of the American people would say, no, the federal government should not be in the business of owning corporations.
No, and I think it goes even deeper. This is such a big story, and it kind of makes me stick to my stomach that a Republican is in office doing this.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll even say this. I'll flip it around. That a rhino is in office doing this. Okay, because that's a Republican in name only when you consider what he's doing in terms of buying stakes in businesses for the government. That's just mind blowing. Now, take it a step further. And I think you brought it up in the week, when the next Democrat, there will be another Democrat in office. There will be. Unfortunately, you and I, we don't like that, but it's going to happen.
Right.
When that next Democrat takes office, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
He, she, they, whatever you want to call him. What is he going to do? He's going to say, well, your guy bought stake in that. You know what? I want to buy more stake, and I want to get this, and I want to get that. It kind of reminds me of Mitt Romney's Obamacare model in Massachusetts. You remember that campaign, that debate? Mitt Romney had no comeback for it because I forget the exact words Obama said, but how do you defend that?
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah.
You did it. So yeah, that proved to be a vulnerable point for Romney.
Absolutely, and this is where I see this heading, and it kind of sickens me a little bit because the government will never want to lose, right? So they have a stake in Intel. They want to see a return on their investment. the ROI is very important to every business. It's more important for when a government has a stake in a company, because they can control the market, so to speak. Now they're going to force whoever to buy, and they're going to force the product price, as you mentioned. There's just so much to this it's really mind blowing. And then even to take a step further, and you brought it up, it's even more mind blowing that there's no one really speaking out about it. The only people I've heard speaking out about it is, I believe, is Senator Tillis and Senator Paul. Those are the only people really saying anything.
Now you've hurt my feelings.
This is a terrible idea. Yeah.
Now you've hurt my feelings.
I have?
Yeah. You said nobody's speaking out about it. And you didn't mention me.
Well, you are. I apologize. Charles. I did.
Okay, I'll dry my bitter tears of anguish. The other people you mentioned were members of Congress, and I am not. So you're right about that.
No, but you're right. Not very many people are speaking out about it, and it's kind of it's so far left that it's so surprising that people who consider themselves conservatives aren't speaking out about it.
Yes,
this is a far left idea, and I like what you said. He essentially just picked up Bernie Sanders' flag and ran with it. I mean, you might not have said Bernie's name, but you said he picked up a flag and ran. I mean, Bernie is in 100% agreement with this.
Yeah, he is.
I'm sure.
Thinks it's a great idea.
Bernie probably has to. Go ahead, Charles. I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you. But, one other conservative, Kevin O'Leary the other day, I saw him on YouTube, and he was saying this Intel, the idea of government, you're on my tax money is now going into Intel. That's a lousy buy. He said, if I were looking for a stock to buy right now, the last stock in the world I'd buy is Intel. The company's been grossly mismanaged for a number of years. It's on its last legs. What should happen? Intel should go bankrupt, and the various components of it should be sold off to other companies who would operate them and keep their employees working and turn a profit. But Intel is a dead horse, and here's Donald Trump sinking billions of our tax dollars into it.
Right, and you know what that reminds me of when you said that, Charles? And there was a huge uproar when this happened. Do you remember when Obama bailed out the automotive industry?
Yeah.
Remember with Chrysler and GM? That was a big deal. I didn't like that thing either, personally. And I just don't think government should be meddling in private businesses. And I spoke out against it then, and I'm speaking out against it now. And I feel a lot more conservatives spoke out against that than they are this. And that just, I can't wrap my head around it. I can't. And
see, that's why I was kind of curious about Limbaugh, is because today there is no equivalent of Rush Limbaugh. He has not been replaced as the premier voice, the preeminent voice of conservatism in the media. If Limbaugh were to take something like this and be true to his conservative principles and say this is a bad idea, don't do it, he would give cover to other conservatives who would then possibly go ahead and go along with him. As it is, there's nobody to give cover, and in today's America, if you're on the right and you oppose Trump, you're pretty much just swept out of the way or brushed aside or whatever, because after all, Donald Trump is the president of the United States, and he's the leader of that movement. What is it? Well, it's what he says it is. Even if it's socialism, yes, that's right. And there are those of us who say, well, there's nothing conservative or free enterprise about that. And, basically we're shouting in the wilderness.
Yeah, and there's things that I like that he's doing, like you brought up the DC earlier, I'm all in favor of that, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, why shouldn't our capital? Yeah. So I mean, there's things that I like, but it's just, right now it's the economy that I don't like. The economic, not the economy, the economic ramifications that can happen, right? With these deals, with tariffs, just things of that nature, right? That's what I don't like, and it's very to have your hands in that type of in that pot and continuously stirring it is very not conservative.
At least with the tariffs, I am not happy with the idea, but there's a case to be made, and there's a rationale. And I've said on this program before, hey, we'll have to see how this works out. It's possible that we will have a better result than I foresee. I'd like that. But this idea of public ownership of private companies, there's no decent argument for this. None. It's a terrible idea from square one. And the fact that the president now thinks it's wonderful and, hey, we're going to do more of this. Who do you think you are, Clement Attlee?
Yeah. I don't get it. I will say with the tariffs, like in my business, I was on a business call earlier in the week with the supplier, and he was giving me a price breakdown of everything that I needed, all my product, and he did say he did tell me, though, he goes, hey, this price or this quote is only good till 8/31, so this coming Sunday. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, 9/1, we have to raise our prices by 7% due to the tariffs.
Right, exactly.
And
there it is.
And I said, okay, and I appreciated his honesty, and that got the ball moving a little faster, right? Because I wanted to save 7%, especially when I have to take that product that's kind of already been spoken for, and then either I eat the cost or I go back to the customer and say, hey, guess what? I told you that this was going to cost X number. Now it's going to be X number. So I was trying to avoid that, which I guess I'm going to avoid it now, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Well, yeah,
and it isn't as easy as people think. Buy American. I can't just buy American sometimes because some of the manufacturing isn't in America, the product that I need, if that makes sense.
Right, and you're not by any matter of means alone. We've got another caller who thinks he has an argument that he'd like to bring forward. Let's say hello to Evan and find out what's on his mind. Hey, buddy.
I come as more of an independent. I kind of agree with Bernie Sanders. I'm not a fan of corporate power, and I'm not sure why Republicans seem to like corporate power. So Sanders' logic, and this is where I'm reading on his thought process. If microchip companies make a profit from generous grants that they receive from the federal government, the taxpayers of America have a right to a reasonable return on that investment. I agree with that.
Okay,
I'm not sure where you guys don't seem to understand that.
Let me respond to that. What Sanders is talking about, and President Trump has mentioned this too, under the previous administration, the Biden administration, one of the things that Biden got through Congress was called the CHIPS Act, and this was essentially huge government subsidies to these various companies. Now, if I were in Congress, I would have voted against that. I would have said, no, it is not the job of the government to give taxpayers money to these private corporations. Bernie Sanders, who purports to not like corporations, he voted for that. He voted in favor of giving your money and my money to these corporations. So I have a problem with that. But now Trump comes along, and he says, okay, the government's given this money to Intel, so now we want 10% of your stock. The proper thing to do would have been to say, okay, the money that we gave you, consider that a loan repayable at a certain percent of interest over a period of so long. In other words, you undo the grant. You don't compound the felony. What Mr. Trump do is give a textbook case of two wrongs attempting to make a right. But Bernie Sanders is not being consistent. He says he's suspicious, etc., of corporations, but he voted to give billions of taxpayers' dollars to them. That doesn't make sense. I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, they're a bit switchy. I agree with you, and no, I won't disagree with you guys 100%. Again, I don't agree with this whole corporate power. I see it here in Santa Cruz, where we've got a lot of corporate power already in our political system. So corporate power doesn't seem to be great, and I don't feel like that's a really good conservative value to be valuing your thought process on these over-controlled corporate powers that are taking over our cities and now our political system. So I'll leave you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, and yeah, have a good rest of your show again.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't know. When I run into people hollering about corporate power, bear in mind a corporation can't force you to do anything, but the government can.
Nope.
So there's state power is what to really be afraid of. Corporation, okay, we're the Coca-Cola company. Well, that's fine. I don't like Coca-Cola. I'm not going to buy your product. Okay, that corporation cannot force me to buy their product. They have no power. But the government can come in and say, look, if you want to buy an automobile, you have to buy an electric automobile. We're not going to allow you to buy any other kind. At that point, state power is more powerful. That's all there is to it.
100%. And I think that's, before I go on with what Evan said, I challenge him to look up, Bernie Sanders, see how he got wealthy, because, if you want to bring up corporate greed, there's a big difference, when you have a corporation. You brought up Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola makes a product, they sell a product, and that's what people want to buy. Like you said, no one's forcing. Some people like Pepsi, right? But they don't got to buy Coke, but they make a profit off of the product that they sell. Like my business, I make a profit off a service that we provide, right? And so they don't have to go with me. Now, what they choose to do with that money is up to them, right? That corporation can choose to donate to Donald Trump. That they could choose to donate to whomever. They've made their money. And you brought up a really good point with a government state. They can force you to buy an electric car. So not to jumble around too much, but Bernie Sanders is pretty wealthy for never having to create a product. I mean, he says he wrote a book, and that's how he made his money. Maybe I should write a book. But I think as conservatives, we tend to protect corporations a little bit more. Not protect, but tend to favor them a little bit more because we want a free market. We don't want state-run capitalism. We want free market capitalism.
Yes,
we want the consumer to decide, hey,
and if a corporation doesn't do a good job, that corporation goes away. I believe in capital punishment for corporations. 100%. I mean, a few moments ago I said Intel, for example. Intel is a corporation that should no longer exist. It's been mismanaged. It's been botched up. Intel should go away. So this idea that I favor corporations and want to see them prosper and survive only to the extent that they justify themselves. When a corporation screws up, off with its head. Right,
100%. That's what we feel like. It wasn't a conservative president that bailed out the auto industry. In my mind, like, hey, there had been another company that would have come in and overtaken that share in the market. So they were making terrible vehicles.
So bottom line, you are on board with my argument that Donald Trump's idea of taking partial ownership of private corporations for the government is a terrible blunder.
1,000%. This got my stomach churning a little bit because, as a conservative, we don't believe in this. It just doesn't make sense to me. If I was a POW for 5 years and I didn't know what was going on, and I came back and they said, "Hey, we're state-run capitalism," name the president that got us in that, I would have named Biden first, Obama, Clinton. It's that's a lot longer than 5 years ago, but you get my point.
Sure.
I would have not named Donald Trump. It would have not even. I would have been. My jaw would have dropped. What, a conservative, a Republican president? It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense. I don't know. I go back to the call that we had a couple weeks ago. Is it really coming from him, or is it some of his insiders? Some of his economic advisors. Because I know Navarro was a lifelong Democrat up until 2016. I mean, is it possible that he's the one selling him on it?
That could be, because Peter Navarro was definitely a wingnut. And the idea that anybody who's listening too much to him could wind up doing some really strange stuff.
Yeah, I've wrapped my head around this for a couple of days now, and for a little longer than that, because I don't like that I voted for someone that's doing this, because it's just not. It's not something that I did not foreshadow this. This is not something I saw coming.
Right.
I can live with the tariffs. I don't like them, but I can live with them.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad that we've had so far one call, one responder on this particular issue, and you're taking my part on it, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you. Always nice to have somebody seeing things the same way. I don't think I had to convince you much. It sounds to me like your natural bent was, look, this business of the government taking large shares of private corporations. What could possibly go wrong?
We're about to find out, Charles. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate hearing from you. Have a great day.
Take care.
Got some interesting phone calls going today. Let's grab a quick break and then get back to the phones. I'm Charles Freedman. Give me 2 minutes here.
The Santa Cruz County Fair opens Wednesday, September 10th with FMX Rampage at the Grandstand featuring Adam Jones, X-Game gold medalist with his action team. Thursday, it's the Outlaw Mariachi. Friday, it's the White Album Ensemble. Saturday, Red returns, a Taylor Swift tribute band. And Sunday, the Chata Show, and that evening, Los Dinos. And our drone show at 9 o'clock each night. Pre-sale tickets and information at SantaCruzCountyFair.com.
The Santa Cruz County Fair.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am Attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, Attorney Angel L. Hess at SantaCruzLegal.net.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis to build community. Listen to Carly.
Thanks, Jenna. For those who wake up in the middle of the night, Treehouse suggests a THC CBN split edible blend like Sleepy Time from Sensi Chew. Sleep the night away.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
What's your family eating for dinner? Chef Ben here at the Back 9 Grill and Bar, where you can pick up family dinner that feeds 4 to 6 hungry people. Family meals include a full rack of ribs, a whole smoked chicken, pound of pulled pork, and plenty of barbecue sauce. Served with a full quart of baked beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, dinner rolls, pickles, a side of onions, and for dessert, brownies with a pint of Mary Ann's vanilla ice cream. Call and order your family's dinner about 15 minutes before you want to eat. See you at the 9.
Okay, let's take our next phone call. This is Mark. Hey, Mark, I got a question for you. We just ran 2 minutes of commercials. During those 2 minutes, could you hear the commercials, or was that just dead air to you?
No, I heard them.
Okay, great. Just curious. Okay, please proceed with your call. What would you like to talk about?
Well, on the Donald Trump's eccentricities, I voted for him, and, most of his policy I'm following. But he does go off the rails every now and then. And this latest one was the dismissal of the head of the Centers for Disease Control. That's Susan Monterez. She's only been there a month. He had to run her appointment through the Senate, and the Senate, voted, we'll appoint her. And then I guess she's butting heads with Robert Kennedy, the head of, HHS.
That's what it says here. Yeah. I'm looking, since you raised this, I remember there was a piece in the Wall Street Journal today about this. So I'm looking at it, and what you're saying here is just absolutely matches this word for word.
Yeah, and I don't know a lot about her, obviously, but Robert Kennedy, I have diminished respect for. He has this MAHA program, Make America Healthy Again, and agriculture very much supported Donald Trump, very much for him, donated, voted for him, and then he appoints Robert Kennedy as the health secretary. He's come out with this MAHA thing, which, anti-vaccination, which I guess he ran into Monterez with. But he's also hitting ag. The big thing he's come out with is to ban glyphosate, the Roundup thing. And no, it's a tool we use. It's not a carcinogen. It's been cleared of all, the evil things. But here we have Robert Kennedy with Donald Trump's ear, and he's just, again, like I said earlier, going off the rails on quite a few things. And I'm not a medical expert, but I'm an agricultural knowledgeable person, and his comments on agriculture are totally wrong and without support or any basis. So, dismissing Monterez after being approved by the Senate, Trump getting one of his appointees through the Senate, which is a huge thing, and then yanking her position after 1 month. I'm totally in disagreement with this.
Well, I'm glad to have you call in on it because you have obviously a closer view of this than I do because you're in the industry. When I read the piece in the paper this morning, it didn't smell good, and the first thing I saw was, here is somebody who clashed with Bobby Kennedy Jr., and I'm thinking to myself, that's a really strong point in her favor. I've made the point on this. I made the point on this program a number of times when Mr. Trump was elected and sent his cabinet choices to the Senate. The one I would have opposed was Robert Kennedy Jr. But I understand what happened there, and this was a political deal. Bobby had started running for president as a Democrat. The Democrats froze him out, so he decided, okay, I'll run as an independent, and he was polling, 1-2% at most, but President Trump, looking at this campaign, said, 1 or 2% could be the difference. And indeed, he beat Kamala Harris by 2%. So he went to Bobby Kennedy and he said, look, tell you what, you drop your presidential campaign and support me. And in return, if I get elected, you can be Secretary of Health and Human Services. It's a good old-fashioned political bargain. And so these two guys shook hands and they both followed through. Kennedy supported Trump, and Trump appointed Kennedy. But as a U.S. Senator, I wasn't part of that bargain, and I wouldn't have ratified it.
No, I was disappointed to see it, and knowing his background and his eccentricities, and they're coming to play now. And
he's a leftist. He is a leftist.
No, he's a nut. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry, but he is. He's so off the wall. And I'm not the COVID fanatic. I didn't like wearing masks. I got the one shot, or 2 shots because they told you to, but that ended there. But his anti-vaccine rants. Smallpox, polio. I get my flu or whatever. But that's my decision for him to remove those opportunities or denigrate us who utilize them. I think it's wrong. I didn't get I'm not getting the COVID shot now because I don't think it's an issue. But these other diseases, they do exist.
Well, I can't help but wonder how much damage Mr. Kennedy will do. Donald Trump is. During this whole program today, I've been taking him to task for this business of taking partial interests in private corporations. Now you're taking him to task for this. Mr. Trump has always been a problematic fellow. He does plenty of things that you and I like, but he is always coming up with high-profile ways of giving us pause, and I guess that's what you get. I will submit to you that he is a hell of an improvement on somebody who is almost always wrong. I submit to you Biden-Harris.
Well, that's true. And the other thing, current day, the people on the left or in the Democratic Party, what you hear from them, you're hearing from that guy who's running for mayor of New York. You hear from several of the Congress people, Congresswomen, actually. And, Trump looks normal. Compared to what's coming out of them. And, a horrific thing happened in Minneapolis, and my brother lives in Minneapolis, outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and his grandchildren go to a Catholic school in Minneapolis. And it was 10 miles from where that event happened. And, they were just in a morning of terror that they hear a Catholic school is being shot up in Minnesota. And their grandchildren were not affected. But he was so taken aback by the mayor of Minneapolis on his comments. And he said, the mayor stated, this is not the time to take retribution against the transgendered community. Well, that wasn't who was hurt. Their children were hurt. Christian children were shot down in a church, and to bring up that the transgendered community that they need protection was an affront. It was horrific. I mean, but it just shows the mindset of the Democrats. Where I look at Trump, I go, okay, he is what he is, but he's not that.
See, I wouldn't have made a fetish out of the fact that the murderer was a transgender person. I really don't care about that. Most transgendered people don't commit mass murders. Most normal heterosexual people don't commit mass murders. That's what interests me. That's what concerns me about this person, and that's why I believe this person should be tried and given a fair trial and executed.
Well, he did that himself. He shot himself. So
oh, really? Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hallelujah. He removed himself from the...
gone.
It used to be that you'd say they cheated justice, but unfortunately today, if he hadn't shot himself, we'd be paying for his medical bills for the next 40 years. So, hallelujah.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think it was just such a horrific statement to be made by the mayor of Minneapolis at this time, and he should just be addressing the affected group.
It's
and
just
his
a matter.
Christian children.
It's a matter of political pandering. It's not. It's no surprise, but it's not attractive. Anyway, thank you for the call and
Thank you, Charles.
for raising a flag about this, because I hadn't talked about it, and I'm glad you did. Have a great day.
Thank you, Charles.
I have had a wonderful third hour here, thanks to some terrific people who have taken the time to call in, talk about some things that, one of them was reacting to a point I made. Mark called in and wanted to talk about something else entirely, which I had happened to spot but hadn't made a big thing out of. President Trump is more and more, I'm going to end the program by mentioning this. He seems to have the idea that, well, remember when Barack Obama once said, I've got a cell phone and I've got a pen so I can govern? Mr. Trump seems to be of that mind. And I don't like it. The idea that he seems to think that he actually has said, well, basically I can do whatever I want to do. No, that's not true. You operate under the Constitution of the United States, which essentially limits the powers of government generally and the powers of the presidency specifically. There are certain things you cannot do. And the idea that you can accomplish whatever by simply issuing executive orders, well, you could do a lot that way, but bear in mind, the next president, on Monday the president said, I have the right to do anything I want to do. No, you don't. That is not a description of the chief executive of our constitutional republic. It simply isn't. Now, the problem, many of the things, as a matter of fact, most of the things the president wants to do are things that, frankly, I'm in sympathy with. He wants to end mail-in voting. I agree. He wants to announce a new policy of coercing local governments into abandoning no cash bail policies. I agree. He threatened to send the military to Baltimore, said he'd like to send them to a few other cities. Well, that pushes the bounds of his authority, but when those cities and their elected leadership abdicates their basic responsibility of providing clean, safe streets, I mean, you talk about running a city, there's all kinds of services and this and that and the other thing, but the foundation, the very bedrock that it all rests on, is a clean, safe city. Levels of sanitation and public safety that are, well, simply acceptable in a modern civilized country. This is not Bangladesh, and our cities should not look like some third world hellhole. And the Democrats have allowed that to occur in city after city. Mr. Trump, as president, is saying, I'm going to do something about this. The problem, under the Constitution, I don't believe that he has authorized to send military into American cities. Washington, D.C. is unique. What he can do, he can clean up Washington, D.C., and then hope that other cities will say, see, look what can be accomplished. Look what can be done with the right policies and the political will. You can have a clean, safe city. And if other city administrations don't take that to heart, you take the case of their voters and you say, hey, vote out these city councils and these mayors that aren't producing a clean, safe city for you. And it's happening. Mayor London Breed of San Francisco did not get reelected. She was beaten by Daniel Lurie, who is now delivering a cleaner, safer San Francisco. That's San Francisco. That's a pretty left-wing town. So my point is, this can happen anywhere. And you'll notice that when Mr. Trump goes on his litanies of cities that are in horrible condition, you don't hear San Francisco mentioned anymore. I can't help but wonder why that is. Maybe because the shoe no longer fits. It did, but it don't. Anyway, this idea is an important one to me. Limited government is something that conservatives are about, and the idea of a president simply undertaking it upon himself to do things, even things that I like. It's not just a matter of policy, it's a matter of procedure. We talk about the rule of law. This is what the rule of law means. The president does not simply get to do what he wants to do. And when Mr. Trump says he can, he's wrong. Okay, I've got time for one more thing real quick before we go. Lisa Cook has been dismissed from the Federal Reserve Board by the President of the United States. And there's a big hoo-ha going on about it. And from what I can see, this is really a much simpler thing than we might think. Ms. Cook took out mortgage documents. One on a home in Michigan where she taught school. The other was an apartment near her childhood home in Atlanta. So these are hundreds of miles apart. And in both cases, these are mortgages. She's not renting. She's buying. So she needs a note. Perfectly normal. But in both cases, Michigan and Georgia, she indicated that these residents she was purchasing would be her primary residence. Now, it was the Firesign Theater years ago who said, how can you be in two places at once when you're not anywhere at all? In Ms. Cook's case, she can't be in two places at once, and neither can you or I. None of us has two primary residences. There are plenty of people around the country who own second homes. Ms. Cook has a second home. Fine, I got no problem with that. She has a perfect right. But to claim that they are both primary residences is mortgage fraud. Why? Well, the primary residence enjoys special circumstances. You can get better terms on your loan, maybe not have to put up as big a down payment, maybe get a lower interest rate. In other words, there's money involved. So what Ms. Cook appears to have done here, and again, the question of whether she took out these mortgages is not even in question. She did. So what should happen? Well, obviously, the idea that somebody who's on the Federal Reserve Board is committing mortgage fraud is kind of, right? So, under normal circumstances, she'd be subjected to this disciplinary action, that disciplinary action. During that period of time, she would be disqualified from her position. She's one of the members of the Federal Reserve Board. She would be not attending meetings, not casting votes, and so on and so forth, for a period of probably about 2.5 years. And the board meets 4 times a year, so that's how many meetings? 8 meetings? where she would, the board would be short a member, short of its legitimate complement. So the president's saying, we can't have that. She's fired for cause, and we'll put somebody else in her place. On this particular one, it'll be interesting to see how the Supreme Court comes down, but I am inclined to see things the president's way on this one. And to say to people like Letitia James and like Lisa Cook and like some of these others, you cannot have two primary residences. Adam Schiff is another one who's in trouble for doing the same thing. You're trying to shave a few $1,000s by breaking the law. This is not a matter of an ethical violation or, oh, gee, you shouldn't. This is black letter law. You cannot do this. That's why the term mortgage fraud comes into use. So, if there are any listeners to this program who are in the elevated position of being able to own two homes, make sure that only one of them is claimed as your primary residence. It's really not a very difficult thing, but it will keep you on the right side of the law. And it also is consistent with reality. After all, you really do only have one primary residence. Okay, we've got, 2 minutes left in today's program. Not much time for any other issues to come up. I noticed that we had a caller earlier, Carl, who was upset over the war in Gaza, figuring that Hamas is getting away with murder, which of course they are on a daily basis. Well, a group of employees have raised a Palestinian flag outside Microsoft's headquarters and occupied an executive office. Now the tech staff are now staging a revolt over the fact that Microsoft works with and has arrangements with the Israeli government. Are some people going to get canned? Tech giants have long given employees latitude to engage in political speech at work. That's the height of impropriety. I've worked at several places over my lifetime. I have never displayed political paraphernalia at a work station. I wouldn't. Didn't these people ever have mothers to tell them there's a time and a place for everything? I guess not. The idea being that any impingement on their infantile desires is somehow unacceptable. Well, you raise a kid like that and you get what you get. Now Microsoft is in the position of having to try to reestablish order that has been lost, and we all know what that means. Will they do it? Or worst of all, will they cave? Will they then say, okay, well, we will defer to your anguish and no longer deal with Israel? Boy, would that be awful. Worst part of it is it's possible. It's noon. See you tomorrow at 9:06.